So I read somewhere that initially this movie was going to focus on the FBI and sort of the beginnings of the FBI, but thankfully, the director Martin Scorsese and other people working on the film were willing to meet with some Osage members
That's correct.
and sort of rework the film so that while it's not written by the Osage, it's much more from your point of view. It's not sort of focused on a whole nother aspect that sort of makes you a side story.
I read somewhere in the profile of the actress Lily Gladstone's
Hmm.
portrayal of Molly Burkhart in this film that in the original script she's only in 3 scenes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you're kidding.
Imagine what we would have lost out.
I mean, so yeah, it was totally from the FBI's point of view.
Hmm.
Leonardo DiCaprio was originally called in to play the FBI agent who does these investigations.
Mhm.
Jesse Plemons' character.
Yeah. And so that had already been in place before descendants of the people who were murdered in this film
Hmm.
wrote a letter to Scorsese asking for a meeting. All we heard was just chatter. We did not know whether or not this movie was going to be even remotely respectful of our point of view.
Right.
And
Sure.
we didn't know what their intentions were. All we know is that Scorsese is a legend in the film industry in capturing violence. You know,
Mhm.
and it's a big part of his films, his history. So we feared the worst, to be
Right.
honest. And a lot of us got together in community building. We talked about, have they spoken to you? Have they reached out to you? No, they haven't talked to me, and it was like, well, maybe we should write to him and invite him to come to our community. Fix a traditional meal. We'll treat him with respect and ask that he treat us and our ancestors with respect. So that was the intention. And not knowing whether he would have done it or not, we wrote the letter and we sent it to his representatives.
Mhm.
It didn't find its way in front of him. And he did call back and respond and say, let's look at a date and let's do this. And so we got a date on our calendar that worked for him, and everyone came. There was about 150 Osages in the room.
Oh, wow.
Building. And he showed up. He had an entourage, as you could imagine. It wasn't him. He brought all the people who's worked on his films and going back 20, 25 years.
Whoa.
Editors, cinematographers, costume design people who had worked on all his films going back to the 90s were there. And
Wow.
And so there was about 15, 16 of them showed up and went through, and they shook everyone's hand in the room. We had big receiving lines. And after that, we all sat down and ate a traditional Osage meal. And a friend, Wilson Pipestail, who was one of he was kind of the MC of that evening.
Okay.
And he was sitting over there and he was watching Scorsese eat traditional meat gravy. It was like a soup. He tasted it, took a little small spoonful of it. And all of a sudden his eyes got big and he just started digging.
It was tasty.
Yeah. We wanted to do it right. We wanted to do it respectfully. And we wanted to put out our best, representation of our cultural, our food,
Sure.
And after that, Wilson got up, and his name's Wilson Pipestem. He's a lawyer. He's Osage and Oto. And he started the conversation by reminding everybody why we're all here and all this stuff, and thanked Mr. Scorsese and his team for coming and accepting our invitation. And shortly after that, he started handing the mic out to certain ones in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of them got up and said something. Some of them were on point. We need to remember that Osage women are, the glue that holds the family and the communities together. They observe not just the traditional raising of the children responsibilities, but they also keep our traditions. They make clothes, they make the food. They teach the language. They are the ones who are asked to sing around the drum. They cook the meals. They are the glue. And
Right.
it's so tempting to look at a story like this and think Molly is just a damsel in distress being
Right.
exploited like this. She was far from.
Right.
He was, so that kind of,
Sure.
things were being said. When I had a chance to speak, I said something about the Hollywood's history of just missing the native point of view.
Yep.
And a lot of the biggest movies that have native content that by the industry definitions that made money, that awards, that sort of thing,
Right.
critical success, all this sort of thing. There's just a few of them that have done all that. And Dances with Wolves is one.
Yep.
Black Kids, Little Big Man. These all have these same elements in it. One, these are stories written by a white man about Indians.
Right.
Second, it required a white savior character to save the Indian.
Yep.
And third, it's probably, and they're all fiction.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
This is a little bit different. This movie.
this doesn't fit any of that. You don't have to make that film.
Right.
Let us help you because the history is accurately written and documented in the book that David Brand wrote. What is not in the book is the cultural ways of the Osage people, how they dealt with adversity, how they dealt with each other, how they handle these observances of life and death and birth and naming and all these things that make up our daily life that is unique to us. That's not in the book, but that knowledge is in this room,
Right.
and nobody in here wants you to fail,
Exactly. You're all trying to help because you want this to be a successful project.
but we can't go unless we're invited, right?
Right. And the film is definitely better for it. Thinking about what you said about the comment about women. Well, yeah. So I'm a fan of Scorsese's films and generally have a lot of historical interest in Native history and sort of like the interweaving of Native history into American history. But thinking just the comment that you just mentioned, I can see how a filmmaker then made that happen, or I can see the influence there when you're talking about women being sort of the glue that holds the society together.
Right.
I just rewatched the movie yesterday and thinking through how sort of they see all the women that are depicted with one exception, and I think it exemplifies this, feel very like they're rocks. They are grounded, even the way that they move and the way that they walk, except for Anna when she's kind of going off the rails. Yeah. They except for Anna when she's going off the rails, like they have this quiet confidence, and so like they are right exactly where they should be at all times.
I'm sitting I got a private screening of the film before it was premiered at Cannes, and I can tell you, I'm sitting there with my brothers and sisters, and we're all watching, in this small theater that was set up for us, and other descendants, and I'm elbowing my sister and my brother. Even though it was kind of like a blur, I was so excited to see it because my imagination was going wild about what actually made it on the screen,
Right.
After we got done, I was talking to my brothers and sisters. I was like, what was so unique about the way he did the sisters is that I know Osage women, and there's a little, even the ones that are my contemporaries, I could see elements of their personality reflected in these characters. That cool. Is truly an Osage point of view, and there are different ways in which they find humor, how they show love, how they show anger, frustration, and how they lash out, and all these things. We're all present in these characters that they created, and they couldn't have gotten that out of the book.
Right.
The only way they could have gotten that was by listening to Osage voices tell them about our way of life, and they were able to weave that into the script, the new script that they wrote.
Sure.
And I have to say this because I think part of it's true. One is that they have, even though the pandemic, this global pandemic came and swept through everywhere and caused all these changes in society, and industries were shut down literally because it wasn't safe. So when Scorsese, after he talked to everybody, listened to everybody, he got up and he made some observations. And one, he said, I'm really glad I came. I learned something that I didn't know. And I promise you that I will take the time to integrate what I'm hearing tonight into the script. And he made that promise right then and there. And then he said, and I'm not going to start filming until I get the story right.
Oh, wow.
And he later said he was delaying production. It was supposed to start in March of 2020, and he was going to put it off until May of 2020. So I'm thinking, well, he's going to spend 8-9 weeks on the script. I don't know how much he's going to really change in that short of time, because so many investments have already been made based on the original script, And so I was a little concerned. But we all know what happened in spring of 2020.
Right.
The whole industry shut down for the rest of the year. And so instead of having just 8 weeks to rework the script, he had all the rest of the year to rewrite it. And he did.
Yeah.
And because of that, he changed the casting the choices. That's when Leo was signed to play Ernest Burkhart, Molly's husband. And so when I saw word of that come out of the industry trade news coverage of that big change, I was hopeful that I thought that maybe they did listen to what we said, because there's no way you're going to put an A-list actor to play the husband of an Osage woman unless you're going to spend a fair amount of time developing her character as well. And
Yeah, she's only in 3 scenes.
Yeah. So that was a game changer, in my opinion, that I think. So while the world was definitely adversely impacted by the pandemic, this movie actually benefited.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something we've talked about with other guests, and that, the real really accurately capturing the history is possible. It just takes time.
But it takes a long time.
It takes more effort. It takes, it's not the easy thing to do. But
No,
sometimes
this is
it's very much
definitely
worth
not
it.
the easy thing to do.